Okay.
There you go. I'm recording again now. Hello, everybody. Welcome. So the question is, what tools would you recommend to help a person stay strong and be resilient? So the first thing is, like I said, accept it, but try, and I hate the word try, put yourself in a position where you're looking at all of the pluses instead of all the minuses. Focus on what can be gained from this rather than what you've lost from this. And if you find yourself getting into a funk of woe is me, as I call it, and you can't deal with the situation that you're in, then speak to somebody, talk to somebody about how to get past this and get through this. And it's very difficult to say what tools I would recommend because it's different for every single person. You can't generalize about stuff like that. So some people might say, yeah, I'm going to think positive. I'm going to look at all the opportunities that this holds. And you can work with that person to develop in that way. Or you might have somebody who is really depressed, really frightened, really worried. And the tools that they're going to need is some coaching and support to help them to change their mindset and think differently and feel better about things. So it's very much a personal thing.
Can I add something to that?
Of course you
can. Okay. First of all, I was in a department that had to make people redundant, and I was the unfortunate legal person that had to do it with the HR person. And one thing that was new to me was actually when you're made redundant and offered a payment up to 30,000, it's not taxed.
That's right.
Who knew? Secondly, you can, if you have a house or a mortgage, you can take a payment holiday if you have redundancy insurance. So you can check the terms of your mortgage and see if you have insurance in place to cover you for the eventuality of being made redundant. And of course, given the current situation with the pandemic, maybe that's changed, but look into it, because if you can take a holiday without having to use your savings, it gives you a little bit more to live off. Of course, you have to pay it back, but look into it.
It's true. The only thing I would say about that is when you look at the cost of redundancy cover in insurance, it's very, very high.
Yeah, I haven't done it. I know colleagues in the past had.
Yeah, and I doubt very much that you will get any kind of redundancy cover due to pandemic / acts of God / situations beyond our control.
Depends what the reason is you're given it. Yeah, you're right. Generally, you're right there.
Yeah. So it's all a minefield. It's a very tricky minefield.
And the last thing was the group of people. There were 8 people that got made redundant, and what they went through was really different. So unfortunately, a couple of them really couldn't cope at all well with life. So unfortunately, things didn't go in the right direction for them. And to your point, if people think they need advice or are feeling very alone about it, reach out, because sometimes you just need someone to say to you step by step, have you been to the gym? Have you got some fresh air today? Just to kind of check that you're literally alive and ticking, because of course you're going to go into a bit of a downward spiral at the beginning, even if it's not personal. It feels terribly personal. So that's probably where coaching probably could help to help plan next steps and actions.
For sure. If only just through having that free discovery call, just to see if it's something that can help you, because you don't really know until you ask. I had coaching myself a year ago, and I didn't know really that I needed it. I got it complimentary from work. So I thought, well, why not? And it wasn't until I started doing it that I realized how much I needed it and how much difference it made and how well it worked. And I consider myself to be quite a strong, resourceful, positive thinking person. I probably wasn't so much back then as I am now. But then again, it's the coaching that I had that turned me into the positive, resilient, forward-thinking person that I am now, rather than the mess I was when I went to have the coaching in the first place. So yeah, it does work.
The last thing on that, Ali, you're absolutely right. Totally 100% agree with you. You are armed with so many skills and resources because you've experienced going through that, so you now know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing I wanted to say, and then we'll stop, is when it happened to people in that group, when we were told to make those people redundant, it came down to the cash flow of the company and how bad they were at organising their financial affairs. So even though when you're at the receiving end, it feels very personal, if you just flip it round and push it, you flip it back to the company and say, get this kind of mindset in your head of, it's actually really not my fault you guys didn't get your cash flow into order. There's nothing personal about that.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, you happen to work for a company that isn't good with that, and nothing to do with the human behind you.
Exactly. I don't think generally that any company wants to make people redundant if they can help it. Otherwise, it wouldn't have brought them on in the first place. And one of the things that I say at the very beginning of the redundancy presentation, one of the very first slides, is it is not personal. It's very, very rarely personal, even if you feel that it is. It has to be fair, it has to be open, and it's for a reason beyond anything to do with you. 9.5 times out of 10, I'm sure that it's got absolutely nothing to do with you. What's being made redundant is your role, not you. Your role is being made redundant. People cannot be made redundant as people, but roles, job roles, are what's made redundant. And that's the way to think about it. It's not you, it's not personal.
Yeah. I think it's hard for people to get their head around because, it depends what circumstances you're in as well. Like, I was made redundant long time ago, but I actually took the job knowing that I was eventually going to get made redundant because it was a new town corporation I worked for, so I knew it was only going to last a certain amount of time. So in my head, I was kind of prepared for it, but that doesn't make it any easier because then you're still left looking for a job. But yeah, I know Victoria's written in the comments about the grieving process and another loss. I think that's actually a very valid point because it is a loss. And what does that do? No matter, it is about making yourself more resilient and strengthening your mindset, but you've lost your independence, you've lost your self-esteem, you've lost your financial position. I think you're right, Ali, and I was watching your video earlier on. It is about turning it around, turning it into the positives. Give yourself time to get used to that, and then turn it around and make it positive and do the things you need to do to move on. Because once you start focusing on something else, like take your mind off the problems that are there, and sometimes you've got to look at it as maybe an opportunity. It's maybe an opportunity for doing something totally different. And sometimes people have been made redundant, and then they're in that 2-3 years down the line, they look back and they go, I'm actually really glad that happened because now I'm in a situation that I feel quite fortunate to be in.
I'm delighted, absolutely delighted. And it's my life has changed completely, and it's wonderful because I've been positive. But this is the catch-22. At the time when you need to be most positive, most resilient, most focused on the opportunity and all the good stuff, is the time that you are feeling down and battered and upset and worried, and your emotional energy is hitting the floor. Your self-confidence has gone out the window. So the time you need it is the time it's very difficult to do it. And as we've all said, it's then that you need help to see things just from another point of view, from the outside, to remind you that it's not personal, to remind you that in 10 years' time, you'll hardly even remember that you got made redundant, that it is only a job. It's only a job. No matter how much you love it, it's only a job. And there are other jobs and there are other things that people can do. And we do survive, we do carry on. And it is like grieving. When you lose somebody, I remember when I lost my dad, and it was the first kind of major loss that I'd ever had. I don't think I was ever going to have a day where I didn't cry. where I wasn't sad, where it wasn't in my thoughts every 5 minutes. And it's the same when you're made redundant. It's all that you can think about. It's all that goes on. The loss of your job. Yeah, absolutely. Time is a great healer.
Absolutely, and I think people also need to acknowledge that it's okay to feel like that. It's okay. It's absolutely normal to feel like that. You know, and that relates to, you know, when you're low down in that emotional scale, if you're feeling anxious, depressed in general, it's okay to feel like that. Because when you start telling yourself that, then you're giving yourself permission to do that, but then you need to give yourself permission to get yourself out of that place as well, don't you?
Yeah, I know. But more often than not, all you want to do is sit in a dark corner with a blanket over your head. So somebody said once, I'm going to go out. If you want me, I'll be in the lounge in my fort playing with my teddy bear, because that's all I want to do. So yeah, it's difficult. Have I covered all those questions? Yes. A lot of people are living in fear of this happening. How can they avoid getting too overwhelmed and stressed? It goes back to it again. If it's coming, accept it. It's going to happen. And once you accept it, you can plan. For as long as you don't accept it, you think, you know, there's maybe a chance I'm not going to lose my job, or you get deep into the upset of it all. You're stuck. You can't do anything. The minute you say, okay, I'm going to be made redundant, now what am I going to do? This is the key step to take. What am I going to do now? It's up to me. I can't control being made redundant. There's nothing I can do about that. I might be able to have some influence on my payout. I might be able to have some influence on getting my notice as garden leave instead of having to work it. All that kind of negotiation you can do. But the one thing you can really be in control of is what you do next, what steps you take. And use it as an opportunity to think, what do I really want to do? How many of us get really upset about being made redundant when we're in a job we hate? Because we're so worried about the security that we're going to lose, or the safeness, the comfort zone we're in. Think about, what do I really want to do? This is what I did. I'd been put on furlough. I knew the chances of being made redundant were pretty high. So I spent that time really thinking about what I wanted to do with my life. I look back at it from when was I most happy in work? And that was when I was a weight loss coach for Weight Watchers years ago and writing their training material. I love writing. I love being creative. What can I do in my life that I can do all of those things and actually make a living? And gradually came down to the fact that I wanted to be a coach, to the point where when my boss phoned me and said, can you come into this meeting, virtual meeting, of course, and I went on and was told that I was one of the 4 people at risk of losing my job because there were only 2 roles out of 4 they were going to keep. I said, great, I'll take voluntary, thank you. And I was gone by the next day. I was gone by the next day with the redundancy notice period with no tax or national insurance, my redundancy payment with no tax or national insurance, and my 3 months notice paid as garden leave. I celebrated because I'd accepted it, and I'd worked out what I wanted to do next, got excited about it, and took it all as a positive. Now, don't get me wrong, I was very lucky because I could get those payouts, and I was on a reasonably paid job, and it gave me enough income. There's a lot of people out there who aren't getting any payout at all, or very, very little kind of income, and it's going to be much harder for them because they have less choices. But even so, still think about what you'd really like to do. Take something part-time to keep you ticking over while you research and work on what you really want to do. There are so many options, and we miss out on so many options because we stay in our comfort zone, because we're afraid. We're frightened of the unknown or what might happen. We're all afraid of failure. But it all begins with just accepting.
You know, you said yourself though, Ali, that when you got told about your redundancy, you were really positive that because you had kind of sounds like you had a plan that,
Yeah.
you know what, I'm going to be made redundant. What am I going to? You kind of know what you was going to do with you, but for a lot of people, it's panic mode straight away, especially if the payout is, you know, if you just get the statutory, it's not a lot of money. So in terms of the first step for people that, oh my God, what am I going to do? From a coach perspective, what would you do with them? What would you advise them to do then in terms of, I know mindset is everything, we know that, but sometimes it's really difficult in certain situations to think positively. So what would be one of the first things that you would probably tell somebody that you're coaching who's going through something exactly what you went through, but doesn't have that positive outlook? They can't see beyond today. They can't see, well, actually, this is a time for me to really look into what I really want to do, but stay in the panic mode. What would you advise them?
If I had somebody come to me as a coach who's in that situation, the first thing that I wouldn't do is advise them or tell them what to do. So I just work with them to try and find out what they were afraid of, what their current situation was, what challenges they were facing, how they were feeling, what they wanted to achieve, how they'd like things to be different. And based on that very individual and personal set of circumstances, I then work with that individual for them to find their own answers to their problem, but get them to see it. One of the biggest tools I'd use is getting them to see things from a different perspective. So if you're panicked and you're so in deep in your situation, so one of the questions that I've always found really useful when I'm coaching people like that is, if you were your best friend looking in at your situation, what would you be saying to yourself? How would your friend be seeing this differently from you? So looking at it in a different way, getting them to see it from a wider, bigger picture perspective, and then they draw themselves out of that pit they're in. And you help them through the right questioning, chunking up, chunking down, all of the things that we know about, to really think about, actually, it's not the end of the world, but it's a very individual process. That's what coaching is, very individual. You know, you can do group courses for sure on general things, but when it comes to very personal emotions and problems, one-to-one is really the only way to go in coaching, because everybody's different. Frank, did you want to?
No, I just want to say goodbye. I have to join another meeting at
No problem. Thank you for joining us, Frank.
9:30. Yeah. Okay. Cheers.
Bye now. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, it's just us now.
You're still recording.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah.
Okay.
So whoever is watching this now, you've got the coaches. The coaches are in the room. So were there any other questions? What else have we got? Victoria.
What would you? Oh,
Victoria had a,
coming on.
yeah, she had a few in there, didn't she?
Yeah.
I think I liked when you said about from a coach's perspective is getting them. Obviously, they've got to get to the answer themselves.
Yeah.
That's the thing, and it's really important that we remember that we're there to kind of help them get to the answers themselves. Really, it's just a difficult topic, Ali. I think because it's so out there at the moment. There's a lot of it around us, and I just wanted to come from a panicked perspective, because a lot of people that I speak to are in that negative mindset.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it's how to get them into thinking, what, you know, just to flip it. And as you said, get out, you know, step out of yourself and look in what would you tell that person.
That's it.
And so that was really useful.
Yeah, that was the thing when I was thinking about the presentation and what to include and what to do with it. It was very, very difficult to go too deep emotionally. True. Because it is such an individual perspective, an individual situation. So the presentation is practical advice, really, and just trying to make the point, you know, that it isn't the end of the world. It can be an opportunity. There are things you can do, and there are people you can talk to if you're struggling. And that, and certainly half an hour wasn't really long enough to do it justice either.
It's a whole topic, isn't it? It's a whole topic of conversation, more so.
It is.
It is,
and it's not an easy thing to bring somebody out of a deep emotional despair situation. It really, but talk to somebody, because if you internalize it, it's going to be awful. And don't speak to people at work who are in the same situation as you, because that will just funnel you both down in a spiral of depression. Take it outside, for sure.
I think the heartening thing is for people to know that there are a lot of things that they can do to get themselves out of the situation, and to know that there are a lot of good people out there, good coaches out there that will be able to help them get out of the situation. And it is possible to do. There's you know, a lifeline there for people, if you like.
Yeah.
And you know, people don't always think about using a coach, because I suppose, you know, people are getting to know it more and more in the UK, but this has really been something that you know, in America, in the States, it's a very common thing for people to do. And you said it yourself, Ali, you know, being in that position yourself as a coachee, and I've been in that situation myself last year, you actually, it gives you something to think about that you probably previously didn't, although you are thinking about it. The coach just helps get that information out of you, from you, and it can be very powerful for people to realise that they're answering their own questions, and they're able to get themselves out of the situation themselves. So it's empowering to know that there is help out there. It's empowering to know there's all sorts of things you can do to get to that stage, and move forward. But like I said earlier, it is definitely it's definitely okay to feel like that, because you've got to go through the motions. We're all human. You've got to go through the motions and know that you'll come out the other side okay.
Yeah.
And know that you will. I think it's the knowing that you will part some people struggle with. Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It really is. And that's the thing, Diana, I think you've hit the nail on the head, because you know, when you're in that position that you can think positively and you practice that every day, it's hard to say that to someone else that's lost their livelihood, that's lost everything they know in their lives, and they've maybe got a family to support, and you know, we're talking about practicalities, realities here for some people.
And that's sometimes all they can see, Yvonne, isn't it? That's all they can sometimes see is that
absolutely
moment.
Yeah.
But when they just take a minute and, you know, look out at themselves and really think about it, it's just the knowing that you're going to be okay at the end.
Yeah.
And that's why, like Ali said, the discovery calls, like Ali, you know, mentioned, there's a lot you can find out about yourself as a coachee and as coaches in that time. And there's no obligation. It's just, and you'd be surprised what you can get out of those discovery calls. So I would encourage everybody to, you know, to at least try one, because it could be the first step into changing your situation into a positive.
Yeah, it was with mine.
Yeah, agreed.
But also getting a different perspective, because even if one person watching this recording later does 5 discovery calls with each of us, they're going to get a different perspective from each of us based on what we've experienced. Because I think a lot of us have experienced it. And in some cases with Ali, you're really fortunate and lucky that you were offered enough that you could
and I've
come
said
out
that.
positively.
Yeah.
And of course, not all employers are that kind or able to offer more than the statutory pay. So people are going to feel.
I only got the statutory. I only got the statutory pay, but I've been there for 12 years.
You wanted to take it.
Yeah.
And some people are not presented with the choice. In their head, they've got different commitments. And just all I'm saying is it's different for everyone. And I know when it happened to me many years ago, I didn't for a moment even think about a coach. It didn't even dawn on me that was even somebody I could have gone to. But now, having become one, there's so many plans of action and different perspectives, even from yourselves, all of you here, that I've gained along the way. And it does take time. When it happened to me, I think it literally took me 5 years to get over it, because I was so angry for a long time. I felt very targeted, but then I just put it down to economical reasons, financial reasons. That's what the company told me. Whether I like it or not, it's happened. But it really took me that many years to get past it. So much so that I knew when I bumped into the people in the future, because I knew I would, about what I was going to say to them. I planned it for 5 years. This is what I'm going to say, because you have so much time to think about things. Yeah, so it's not just about the practical measures, it's also about the mental well-being and taking care of yourself, and so that you can move forward and not talk, you've got this inner voice in you telling you things, and that's often not true either, what you hear.
Exactly. And it's just so easy to hear the negative stuff when you're talking to yourself.
Yeah, of course.
Whereas when you're talking to somebody else, especially somebody who knows what they're doing, who knows how to elicit the positive out of you like a coach does, then that makes a huge difference. And I think, Aisha, if you had seen somebody, well, you tell me, if you'd seen a coach 5 years previously when you were in the situation of getting made redundant, how do you think that would have changed your attitude and your outlook thereafter?
I mean, just listening to you and watching your presentation earlier, obviously, it would have been very different, because I was dealing with it very practically. And I had a network of friends around, and they were fantastic. However, there's so much more to it than that. I probably would have gotten myself some bubble wrap and taken out my anger on that instead as an outlet, rather than pushing my frustrations to friends, because as great as they are, it's also a lot for them to take. And it will be happening a lot more to people now because of the situation. So you don't want to exhaust someone. And similarly, I have to add, sometimes people say, oh, you should be able to talk to your friends about anything. But actually, no, it's not always the case, because as you rightly said, Ali, you have to let that person talk. And if that person talks, you have to be willing to listen. That's what coaches do. And I don't think friends are obligated to be in the same position to do that.
No, you're right. And friends all come with different types of friendship as well. They're not all, you can't say you've got a group of friends who are all your confidants and who are there to help you with whatever life throws at you, or whether they may not be able to, they might not want to. But you know with the coach for absolutely sure that you are going to get a unique experience that is completely about you, for you, built around you, where somebody is listening and doing everything they can to help you achieve what it is that you want to achieve. And you might have really great friends who can do that for you, who want that same outcome for you, but do they know how to do it in the same way that we know how to do it?
That's what I was absolutely 100%, 1,000% agree with that. Because I think the thing about friends is you don't know what's going on in their lives. You assume everything's fine. It probably isn't, but they're just not telling you because they don't want to worry you, because you've had happen to you that you've been made redundant. But coaches now, I know, are armed with what to say step by step, how to help someone through something. And it's not, you don't know that person very well, so they can do it very objectively and not subjectively, which is also not a bad thing.
Yeah, the other great thing as well is we're not emotionally involved. and we are not going to have a continuing, ongoing relationship with you, hopefully, really, for years and years. Being a coach is the one job where we actually work to get made redundant. We do it with every client. What we want to do is work with them to get them to the point where they don't need us anymore. That's our job. So we're trying to make ourselves redundant every time we get a client, but we don't get emotionally involved. Whereas with friends, you're going to be friends with them for years. They're always going to remember whatever was said, whatever happened, whatever went on. And there may be a fear of judgment with friends. And also the advice you get from friends might well be kind of loaded, if you know what I mean. Whereas...
What do you mean?
What I mean is you may have friends who don't necessarily have your best interests at heart.
Okay.
You may, you know, they're great friends. I've had friendships in the past where I thought everybody was just absolutely marvelous, and then you find out afterwards that they've kind of got their own agenda going on, and if your agenda doesn't fit with theirs, you know, it's a very deep, very broad, wide subject, that one in itself. But the point I'm trying to make is by coming to a coach, there's no judgment, there's no repercussion, there's no side thing going on. We are literally there 100% for our client in the moment, for them, when they need us to help them with what they want help with. And that's different from friendship.
It's all about that, isn't it? It's all about that.
It's all about you. It's all about you, baby.
Lovely. Okay, so plenty of conversation about redundancy there. So we've recorded most of it, so we'll put that out for all of you guys who will be watching this later, which is why I'm saying it like this. But if you have any further questions or anything you want to know about redundancy or relationships or any of the subjects that any of the rest of these coaches are talking about for the rest of the week, remember that discovery call that's free. If you're suffering, if you're struggling, you want somebody to talk to, come and talk to any one of us. It's going to not cost you anything, but like Aisha said, it might make a difference to the rest of your life if you get that support. Okay, thank you very much, ladies.
Ali, thank you for today.
Great tip.
Thanks, Ali.
Thank you, Ali.
Really
Thank you
helpful.
so
I'm
much.
going to have a
Thank you.
large glass of something now.
You've earned it.
Right.
Thank you. See you all soon.